Vietnam regains macroeconomic stability. Green buildings are budding in Vietnam. And that's the review from last week. Up next, you will learn more about the current situation of green buildings in Vietnam in our crosstalk. According to recent statistics released by the World Bank's International Finance Corporation, the energy consumption of building sector in Vietnam now accounts for over 20% of the entire country's energy consumption. And Vietnam is forecast to face an energy shortage by 2025 of up to 70%. Green buildings are said to be a sustainable solution to this problem. And in our crosstalk this week, we'll take a look at the current development of green buildings in Vietnam and the economic benefits it can bring. And please welcome our guest today, Mr. Nguyễn Minh Thông, Executive Director of the Vietnam Green Building Council. And before we talk, let's take a look at some of the green building projects in Vietnam and how their developers think about their investment in our following report.
The new United Nations building is currently under construction in Hanoi. The project's plan has shown the United Nations demonstrations of a broader commitment to a green agenda, simply by using insulations in the design of external walls and roof, which is a relatively new concept in Vietnam. The Green One UN house has surpassed Vietnam's energy efficient building code requirements by more than 60% in terms of cost savings.
With our design, with the insulation coupled with energy efficient lighting, an intelligent building management system which controls the light and the climate automatically to maintain optimal conditions without energy wastage, good use of natural day lighting. These things together, we're looking at about 26% energy saving and about 20% water saving over a baseline building comparison. We exceed the Vietnam Energy Efficient Building Code by more than 60% in this regard.
Built in the early 1990s, the HITC building is still at the forefront of energy efficiency measures. This escalator, the first of its kind in Hanoi, stops operating when no one steps on it. With initial investments of $714 for the escalator's automatic controller, it saves up to 30% on the electricity bill, equivalent to about $2,000 per year. This building has a power distribution center where this power quality analyzer is fitted. It updates the engineers on the power supply to the building. The device costs $13,000 but allows the whole building to save up 11% on electricity, equivalent to 12.
Saving energy means a lot to us. Firstly, we can save a lot of electricity bills, which is an economic benefit. We can save 20 to 30% bill for air conditioning. Secondly, it can help us improve our service for clients. For example, we can easily adjust temperature as our clients want. Last but not least, our energy saving is also our contribution to the society. As our electricity consumption declines, we are reducing the amount of carbon dioxide released.
If all the parties involved in the construction project, including architects, consultants and designers, work together and focus on a green strategy, like natural ventilation, daylighting and rainwater harvesting, this will help investors to save up 40% on energy and maintain the lifespan of the building.
According to statistics, building complexes, including hotels and commercial centers, consumes from 35% to 40% of the nation's energy. If energy can be saved in this sector, the economy can benefit as well.
Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
What makes a building a green building, in your opinion?
Well, in the world there has been a number of definitions about green building. But one of the most widely known is that green buildings must be environmentally responsible, resource efficient. That means it has to be energy efficient, water saving, and environmentally sound. It has to be design green, It has to be constructed green, and it has to be managed and operate green.
So what are the benefits of investing in green buildings? Or in other words, why should investors and housing developers be interested in green buildings?
Now we know that there are a lot of benefits that green buildings bring to us, but there have not been enough recognition. In Vietnam, many developers, investors look for short-term benefits, profits. They are not looking at long-term benefits. And these benefits includes not only economic, but also social and environmental. These are some of the benefits that the short-term, profit-looking investors normally would ignore. And this is particularly the case in Vietnam.
Right.
If you invest in a green building, you will save a lot of energies, which Vietnam, as you said, is facing a lot of challenges and shortages. You will also save a lot of water, clean water, which is also a problem, potential problem for Vietnam.
So those are the short-term and long-term benefits of green buildings. But is there any particular benefit concerning the brand of green building?
More and more companies, particularly international companies around the world, are thinking and are placing a lot of interest and importance on going green, because their green projects, their green buildings would have much more marketability. A lot of clients would go for green offices. Even inhabitants of buildings now, they want to choose the buildings where they have better indoor environment, they have better health impacts, they have better green surroundings. In the world now, there have been about 94 green building councils.
94.
94. That means more than in 94 countries now.
So are there any estimates of how much can a green building save for its investors?
If they are long-term investors, they would achieve huge returns for the investment in long term. They are taking the whole of the building cycles as for calculations. But in Vietnam, this is one of the major hurdles, as I said from beginning. Most of the investors now would invest in a building construction, and then they just build it fast and then sell it for a very quick profit. And we know that buildings' life would be 50, 70 years.
Right.
So who would pay for that? Who would pay for the cost? It's a society. It's our economy.
So there are a lot of externalities that haven't been accounted in the first
Very true.
calculation.
Very true. And this is where I think the government should take the lead in orientating the market.
But is green building affordable in Vietnam, though?
There's a misperception that green buildings cost too much, much more than conventional buildings. But this is a myth. Green buildings could be constructed at almost with very minimal incremental cost, upfront cost. According to the World Green Building Council, the upfront cost of a green building is from 0.4 to 7%. That is more than the conventional buildings. This is a data particularly applicable to the United States, for example. For Vietnam, it might be a little bit different. Incremental cost might be around 6 or 7 or 5% to achieve the level of green building certification. 5 or 6% is just not much, very minimal, if you compare to what we could get out of it. For the later life of the building, the benefits would be many times more.
It is said that green building can be a golden key to the sustainable development. Why is that?
Well, to say that it is a golden key would not be too much exaggeration. The construction and housing sector consumes a major proportion of the total national consumption of energy. And if the government and the private sector could coordinate their actions to go green, then the whole of the economy could save a lot of cost in terms of energies, in terms of water, in terms of environmental impacts, and also in terms of health for the people who live and work in those buildings. I believe that that would be a major contribution to sustainable development in Vietnam, particularly in cities. And we know that the cities are like the reflections of the society, and it could lead the development of the country.
So despite numerous economic and environmental benefits, green building hasn't received much attention in Vietnam. Why so? The following report will give you the answer.
Despite the benefits that green buildings might bring to investors and developers in terms of energy saving, the concept is not widely known or fully understood. According to the Vietnam Green Building Council, since it has been active in Vietnam since 2007, the council has received registration applications from only 10 construction projects so far. The lack of awareness, ability, capital, labor and management skills, and importantly, legal framework has hindered the development of green buildings in Vietnam.
Most people confuse green buildings with buildings surrounded with plants and trees, or those that have solar panels on the roof. Green buildings require better understanding of all aspects of construction, so comprehensive measures are needed for their development in Vietnam.
The Building Efficiency Energy Code that took effect in 2005 has not been widely implemented due to lack of a specific guidance and enforcement.
The Building Efficiency Energy Code was established by the US-based Derringer Group, which is well known for its expertise and experience in building and energy analysis. The code was based on American standards, which made it difficult to be applied in Vietnam as the country does not have the necessary technical skills.
To tackle these obstacles, the Ministry of Construction is drafting a green building development strategy to 2020 with a vision to 2030. Accordingly, new construction projects must meet requirements on energy saving and efficiency to hopefully reach a target of reducing total national energy consumption by 5 to 8% in the next 3 years. This will hopefully pave the way for green building development in Vietnam in the future.
So what's the current situation of green building development in Vietnam?
Although the time is very short, the green buildings in Vietnam probably started only a few years ago. VGBC, Vietnam Green Building Council, started in Vietnam activities only from 2007. So it's only about 5 or 6 years now. The progress has been quite considerable in some aspects, particularly on awareness raising. But as far as the projects in Vietnam is concerned for green buildings, still very much initial stage, in its infancy, I should say. It's like a baby just born. So far, there are only about 10 projects.
10 projects so far.
Going for certification, for Lotus certification. But most these 10 projects are from the private sector. Private sector is going even in advance of government, any government project.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
So how do you compare the development in Vietnam with other countries in the region and around the world?
Well, I think Vietnam started out on the green movement later. In the US or in the Europe, they started probably 15, 20 years ago. So they have a lot of projects now already. In other countries in the region, they also have many projects certified already, particularly countries like Singapore. Singapore plans from now on 100% of all their new buildings have to be certified.
Yeah, quite aggressive.
Yes, and we all know that things in Singapore could happen very fast. But other countries also like Malaysia, they started also very late, probably as late as Vietnam. But there they have achieved much faster progress. But there are also other countries that are lagging behind, even behind Vietnam, like the Philippines or Thailand in countries where they have a lot of support from government, progress would be very fast. But where the government doesn't take much actions, progress would be slow. We could expect that.
But in Vietnam, the private is moving ahead.
In Vietnam, very interesting situation, because many of the investors and project developers in Vietnam have connections with their home country companies. And usually these multinational companies, they are very much exposed to current international or global trends. So in Vietnam also, even we don't require them, their companies in their countries would require them to go for green. Now in Vietnam, we're very happy to see that the United Nations have pioneered in setting an example for all the UN agencies to have their one UN building in Vietnam, in Hanoi, to be certified with Lotus Gold. That means the highest level of green buildings in Vietnam. Many of the big C retail, supermarkets chain in Vietnam, they go for Lotus certification.
So what are the difficulties to popularize green buildings in Vietnam?
Well, I think there are a number of hurdles. There are a number of issues that is hindering the rapid growth of the green building movement. One of them is the general awareness of the population, even of architects, of civil engineers, of government officials about the benefits of green buildings. Without awareness, without sufficient awareness, there are no market demands. The second is, as I mentioned a little earlier, the philosophy of quick profit mentality of many of the developers in Vietnam, particularly for residential office buildings, where the project developers and investors just want to go for very quick profit, and they don't care much about the consequences. One of the most important hurdle is also lack of very effective regulatory framework by the government. There are not enough incentives for the private sector to build green.
So what can be incentives given from the government to the private sector to boost green development bottom up?
There are a number of things that the government could do. The incentives could be financial, in terms of financial incentives. For example, for those projects that go for green building certification, the government should give some tax breaks. They could also reduce some of the fees for this kind of projects. There are also other non-financial incentives. The government could simplify the permit giving process. They could also promote these projects and to encourage other developers to go along.
So among those recommendations you have just mentioned, what should be the priority for Vietnamese government?
The government should lead by example.
Government should lead.
Lead by example means for all the government-funded projects. For example, the major projects like the National Assembly building, which is being constructed in Bunnings Square. If these major projects go for Lotus Green Building certification, that would give a tremendous signal to the market and to everyone. There's another kind of incentive which is very attractive to the private sector, is to increase the gross ground floor for those projects which achieve green building status or certification. The government would allow an increase in percentage of ground floor, gross floor area for the investor. This is what all the investors always want, to maximize the floor area.
Well, thank you very much for taking your time with us today.
Thank you.
Well, we just had a talk with Mr. Nguyễn Minh Thông from the Vietnam Green Building Council. And we both hope that the government policies on green building are put into practice soon to promote sustainable development in Vietnam. And up next is Market Makers.